Welcome everyone. Welcome back to our lounge. Glad to be back after that fiasco. If you guys are just tuning in, I've had some hardware issues. My computer went kaput, so I had to put the stream on pause. And yeah, I had to fix it, make sure everything is ready and set for streaming properly. Didn't want to keep streaming under those conditions. I was getting like a lot of lag and a lot of fractals, and yeah, just turned into a bit of a mess there. Did not enjoy that, but it turned out to be a good thing. I got the computer fixed again. It's like brand new, and I was able to actually crunch down a lot of things so that it wouldn't be as loaded and overloaded for streaming. So I learned some stuff too, which is great, and it was kind of fun. Turned out to be a good experience, thankfully. Hours though might change towards the future, unfortunately. Got other projects to work on, so time is gonna have to be kind of divided into the week. So I'm still gonna be doing all these sessions, the same sessions. We're gonna have drawing figure basics, we're gonna have drawing comics, we're gonna have the projects, and we're gonna have the coloring comics panels as well. It's just gonna be broken down into days. So like Monday 8 p.m., which is what I'm going to be looking at right now, from 8 p.m. until 10 p.m. I'm going to be doing basics, drawing basics, and drawing comics. And then Tuesday it's going to be 8 p.m. project and coloring comics. But for the rest of this week, I am going to be doing the schedule. So just stay tuned, sign up for Twitter. I'm going to be posting updates about the time changes and schedule changes in the future on there. So make sure you check that out to stay tuned. I'll do an update like I did about the hardware issue thing on Twitch, just to make sure you guys are in the know-how. But yeah, so let's just jump into drawing comics. If this is your very first episode, I highly recommend you guys watch the first episode of Drawing Comics, where I talk about John Buscema. You get like a 5-minute movie reel, just talking about him, getting some pictures, getting some idea of how legendary his work is, how much work he's done in the past, and how influential his work is in Marvel. And beautiful examples of his work, how much skill he has, how much dedication he had for drawing comics and drawing in general, and just more about his life. If you guys weren't in the previous stream, I was mentioning that he doesn't have that much out there about him. His work is out there, but I don't think a lot of people are realizing like all this beautiful work. What differentiates comics from novels, the illustration, all this work is John Buscema. All this work from Marvel, a lot of it is John Buscema. And also talk about Jack Kirby a little bit, very briefly, how important he was actually at the beginning. Also love his work, very unique. And that's just the beauty of comics in general. I think everybody's work is so unique. Everyone's take is so unique. It's just fun to see all that, you know. Same title, comic book artist, totally different styles and ways of expressing themselves. And that's why I love comics so much. But yeah, this is just to show you guys real quick. This is a really old comic. You could see it's so fun to look at these ads from back in the day. 1982. This is a 1982 ad for Bubble Yum. Yeah, just to show you guys these like beautiful images. And it's so interesting that the colors are so basic. It's CMYK, right? Yellow, magenta, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Took me a little, but I got the acronym for it. Yeah, just these 4 colors, and you get all this variation, which is pretty cool. Solid colors, but really what makes them so great, I would say there isn't really a less or better, you know, but really his work is so great that the colors can be that simple and still maintain beautiful panels, beautiful imagery, and fun to look at. You get to see like expressive faces like that. Anyways, enough gushing about John Buscema. Let's learn from his work. So just to review stuff, there was a week-long break, so I feel like it does do some good to just talk about the stuff. I also talk about like coloring and coloring comics, but we'll get to that. But for now, just to talk about, you know, why draw from comics? You know, why are you drawing somebody else's work? And I think the answer to it, the perfect answer to it, is if you are just starting out, and even if you're not. There are 2 takeaways from it. The first one for me, it's a personal one. It's like reading. You know, if you're reading somebody's book, you're not trying to be like the writer, right? You're just reading their work. You're getting into the characters, you're getting into the story. And I think drawing comics is kind of the same, except instead of it being letters, it's images. So you're kind of like reading their images. You're drawing the lines that they're drawing. You're drawing the panels that they're drawing. And you get to see how this person created these images that are very much unique to their style. So it's kind of like that. You're living through them in a sense. Same way when you're reading the book, you are reading through the eye of the writer, you know. So it's kind of like that, you know. I'm reading it visually. I'm in the mind and the process of the artist who created each one of them. And you have to think about all these things when you're drawing out those panels, like, how do I fit this into the image? You know, how do I make this composition? What kind of angle am I going to choose? You know, so when you're drawing from comics, you're learning all these things that could potentially rub off into your own personal work. And, you know, I don't encourage plagiarism. I don't think that it's right if you were to draw exactly the same thing as the other person, claim it yours, and not even credit or say anything about the person that you learn from. I don't encourage that at all. I do like learning from them. I do like reading their work visually and making the lines that they make, creating the characters' expressions, action, camera angles that they make, and just kind of learning these things that I think in some ways, you know, especially when you're talking about camera angles, are fundamental to drawing comics. You have to think about, you don't want to just have straight shots, one face to the next face kind of scenario. Granted, that's sometimes what's called for, but the more you learn, the better your comic is. The more angles you learn, the more compositions you learn, the better your own personal work, your own comic book panels are going to be as well. If you're just learning, it takes away having to have the burden of like, oh, I have to make sure that the anatomy is right. I have to make sure that the characters are interesting. I have to make sure that, you have such a huge list of things you got to keep in mind. But if you choose to draw a comic book, it kind of covers that for you. The images are there. You just have to pay attention to the details. Oh, this is a cool angle. I didn't have to think of it, but now I know how to draw this angle. And you get to practice hand-eye coordination, improve your hand-eye coordination. You get to practice making lines and strokes that you never would have done. Or eventually you would have, but it just kind of crunches down the time. You make lines that you wouldn't have done in the beginning. You're learning them, so you're quickening the pace. As I mentioned, the composition, angles, the anatomy, hand-eye coordination, all that is practiced in just one panel, or just drawing all these panels out. So you're getting a lot better at drawing in general by copying these comics. I'll go over other benefits as we draw, but just to do a quick, getting back into things kind of summary. Those are great reasons to pick your own comic, pick another artist that you're really interested in. If it's not John Buscema, it's someone else, and learn from them. Pick up on all these things. Have that be your routine schedule, in a sense, your drawing schedule of like, all right, for a half hour, I'm going to draw from comics. I'm going to learn all these different things from this great artist and how to draw them. And then you'll see how that really drastically improves your drawing. You'll remember those things as you're drawing from your imagination, as you're drawing your own characters. You're gonna be like, oh yeah, there was this, that, and that. Well, that was done. And it'll just pop to you naturally. All right. So with that said, let's just jump in. We were doing, and when I say we, I like to include you guys in the process. You are viewers. You guys get to see this. So what we were looking at before, it was this panel. We were doing this, but I didn't get to finish much of it. So I'm going to finish this panel and we're going to hop onto this one. If you guys missed it, this was already done. And it is right there. So just to show you guys what you've missed, if you're just tuning in, these are the other panels in comparison. I do at some point need to get a better light. So yeah. Looking for my trusted ruler. That was on the floor. And we're gonna start out by drawing out, oh no, not just yet. The goal is gonna be to finish this panel. So just to also go over, and this is a part of the learning process, this is what I like to say is your tools in your tool belt that you refer to when you need to get a certain job done. So if the job that you need to have done is to make sure that you draw exactly as you see the reference, one of those tools in your tool belt that you can pull out when you need to do that is your ability to recognize negative space. So when you're drawing something, for example, what's a good example of negative space? Oh, right. This is the one that I was talking about before. In this example, the negative space would be this right here. So rather than drawing the exterior part of the helmet, right, the lines that form the exterior, what you're drawing is this object right here that kind of looks like a calf of the leg, right? The frame right here, that's like the front of the shin. But what I'm pointing out is this is the negative space. This is the shape of the negative space between the exterior of the helmet and the frame itself. So it sometimes helps to just switch your perspective. Rather than I'm drawing this exterior, you're drawing the shape to make sure that the distance between this and the frame is exactly as you see it. And that just kind of helps you make sure that things are proportionate and they are in place where they're supposed to be within the panel, to make sure everything else is in place of where it's supposed to be for it to fit in to the frame. So that's just a tool, another tool to ensure accuracy, as I was talking about. So negative space, studying negative space can help you achieve that. You pull that out when you're like, wait, is this proportionate? Is this actually where it's supposed to be on the page? Is it going in a direction that it's supposed to? You know, you could have like the exterior of the helmet pointing inwards more when you're drawing and not realize it. But if you study this shape, you could be like, well, is that shape like that? Is it wider? It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be more narrow, especially at here, at the base. And there is a stream where I also talk about that, where I give an example of a cup and two faces, how a cup can be looked at and recognized as a shape that's formed by the two faces looking at each other, or recognizing two faces that shape the exterior form of the cup. So it's just a fun little visual trick, this visual illusion that happens that makes the process even more entertaining, where you're like, whoa, I didn't recognize it that way, you know? I think another cool example, and I'll just do that real quick before we jump back into this, maybe I could do it here, is with boxes, when you're drawing like cubes rather, right? So we start out, I'm going to do a couple of them to just show this interesting illusion that happens. Draw them exactly the same way, right? Same exact frames. Now I'm going to connect them to form this cube. Two cubes, right? Look exactly the same. But now I'm going to fill this in and say, this is the front of the cube right here. And this is the top, that's the side, and the very one on the back is the back. Now the same exact cube, right? I draw this here, and look at that, switches. Now this is the top, and it looks like you're looking at the cube from the bottom, whereas this is kind of like that, right? So the same exact way, it's drawn exactly the same way, and it just kind of like switches perspective. So it's kind of cool to do that without shading it in. To train your eye to switch between this perspective. Right? We're going to draw them exactly the same way again. 2 cubes. And now just try to recognize that perspective. This perspective and this perspective without shading it in. It's a little bit harder, right? Sometimes you only see this shape when you're looking at the cube. You're like, I could only see this. But this is there as well. You just have to switch your vision and recognize that. And be like, oh, it's right here, actually. So drawn the same exact way. And do it again, just to demonstrate for it. But this time I'm gonna just kind of highlight this one right here as the front. See that? Same exact cubes, drawn exactly the same way. But it's this weird illusion. It's kind of trippy, right? You're just like, wait, huh? It's drawn the same way, but now I could see it this way, as opposed to just this way. I could see it this way, not this way, or I could just see it this way, not this way. But drawn exactly the same way. So anyways, so this is what I was talking about when it comes to negative space. It's your ability to switch your perspective, switch your vision, to notice certain details and to make it more fun. And you're like, oh, that's cool. That's something that's interesting that happens, right? You're all of a sudden your brain is seeing something that really wasn't there. You know, that wasn't there until you paid attention to it. So yeah, you could study the negative space. You could study the relationship between objects. Like, for example, if you're trying to fit this pillar into the frame as it is in the original, as it is in the reference, you want to make sure that it's not way too much on this end, because you still have to draw these guys, and you have to draw the doorway that they're standing in front of, you know, to fit that image in there. So notice this little detail to kind of make it look more worn down and not as angular and clinical looking. Just gonna add this little detail, this little line, and this little line up here. So yeah, to make sure you don't draw the pillar all the way to the left, you study the space difference between this and this, the exterior of the pillar here and the frame, or some other object that's in front of it, to make sure that, well, how close is it? You know, sometimes you don't pay attention to the relationship. You just draw the pillar and then you realize, oh, whoa, it's way too far away from the frame. So that's a tool. That's a tool that you could pull out. So negative spaces is one tool. Call it your wrench. This is your hammer. You know, you pull out the hammer and you're like, oh, look, I need to make sure that this is done right. You know, the other tool might not really fit as much in this scenario, but this does. Let me study this, the space difference between this and this. Is it wide? Is it narrow? Is it much closer to it? Or, for instance, the tip of this hat, right? You draw this person and you're like, how much is the tip actually touching the pillar? It's barely touching it. You know, it's just there, but it's not. So just that's a tool that kind of helps you fit everything into the panel. If you're referencing something, if you're drawing a face, for instance, how close is the eye to the nose, or the nostril rather? Like one of the biggest mistakes people do. How close is the corner of the eye to the nostril? Is it far? Is it near? Yeah, space recognition between objects, excellent tool to ensure that you get good results. Yeah, just being able to switch your perspective when you're looking at things. I thought this was such a cool, interesting illusion that happens is just so weird, you know. There's another one that's kind of like it, where you see a ballerina and she's spinning, but really it's just this like flat image that isn't giving you any direction. It's not telling you, oh, she's going towards the left or the right. It's just kind of going like this. But your vision, your illusion, or I guess your vision just like completes the image and gives you this perception that she's spinning towards a direction. And depending on how you function, some people see her spinning towards the left, and other people see her spinning towards the right only. Whereas it's interchangeable. You can actually control how you perceive the image. Actually, it's so interesting. I do want to bring this up since we're on topic. So I'm going to try to find the link real quick. So isn't that interesting? I've looked at this plenty of times, and I just trained myself to be able to see her spinning in either direction. Like if I want her to spin towards the right, I have her spinning towards the right. If I want to see her spinning towards the left, I could see her spinning towards the left. So really, you could even try this out with your friends. You know, you could be like, which direction do you actually see her spinning in? You know, and they'll be like, oh, I see her spinning counterclockwise. But really, it's completely up to you. You could even find this illusion online. It's a GIF, and let me see even if I could find a GIF file instead of a YouTube video. And because some people are like, oh, it's doing that on its own. You know, how do you prove it that you could see it spinning the other way around? They're like, oh no, it's just the video. The video is making her spin the other direction now. But really, it's your vision that's doing that. Your vision is kind of spinning the character. Close this. Disable it. Throw the GIF in there. So you guys could find this GIF online and break it down. You know, just to see for yourself, like open it up and preview if you're on a Mac. I'm sure there are other apps, and you could look through to see at what point does it shift towards the opposite direction. And there isn't any point. It's just a flat image, and it's just swaying left to right. But yeah, it's completely your vision, and you could switch it to go the opposite direction. And I think most people actually notice that their vision is doing that. They're like, wait, why did she suddenly switch? I just saw her switch another, and then she switched again. But really, it's just your vision. So this is what that block example is like as well. That cube example is just your ability to recognize this sudden switch in perspective. But yeah, I was so fascinated by this when I originally saw it. I was like, how is that possible? How is it that our mind is able to control this image and fill in these blanks of it going the opposite direction when we want it to, when we want it to go counterclockwise or clockwise? It's just such a bizarre reality, you know. I think it's kind of like this idea of magic, right? There isn't a real great explanation for it. Sure, there is a scientific explanation for it, but just by looking at it and having that happen, it's kind of just like magic that our brain is capable of doing. So, enough with the dancing ballerina. Gonna take that away, but you could look it up. It's just spinning dancer GIF, and yeah, you could find it anywhere online if you want to like play around with it more. If you want to show it to your friends and be like, hey, which direction do you see her in? Do you see her spinning the other way around? So check that out. Whoops. And with that said, I'm gonna go back to drawing comics. To finish things up. I'm going to put more of his work in the line of vision, because it is great. You know, and with that said about like just paying attention to details and stuff, like even in this panel, even in this part of the panel, the difference in just one little line can make it look like he's pissed or he's upset. Like sad. Upset, not angry, upset. And that's in the brow, you know, or the line of the direction of the top of the eye. If it's going more downwards, it's gonna look like he's more upset than he is angry or frustrated, how it's portrayed in the original. And I want to pay attention to that. Just shows every line counts and really distinguishes whether you're gonna nail something like an expression and emotion or if you're not. And that's something you'll get gradually, you know? I think, like I was saying, tracing is a great way to develop this skill as well, to make your hand get used to making these lines. You know, you want to, it's like stretching before you go to the gym. You want to make sure that your muscles are capable of doing certain motions, range of motions, without injuring yourself. So it's the same idea with this. When you're tracing, it's kind of like you're doing your stretches. You're making your hand be able to follow the lines a certain way, remember these lines a certain way. And it teaches you so much as well. Like you're actually tracing the figure, you're drawing the anatomy of it. And next time you sit down to draw, let's say the waist, you're like, oh, I remember when I was tracing, it was like this. Instead of like that, or how I drew it. So there's a lot of benefits to it. Now, if you trace and then you say, I'm going to sell this image and say it's mine, that's a different topic. I don't encourage that. I think that's terrible to do. You're just fooling yourself when you do that. And you're just going to feel bad about it later because you're not actually as good as you claim to be. So I don't really encourage wasting time doing that. I encourage learning from them so that you don't have to do anything like that and you can actually be really good at drawing. So we got this grumpy guy. Now here is going to be the difference between having a chubby face, giving him a bit of a chubby face, or this little squiggle right here, showing his cheekbones and making him seem more structurally developed. I think for me personally, the challenge here is that, I mentioned this in other streams, is that I am drawing a lot smaller versions of this than they actually are. Like when Basama was working on these, he was working on comic book panels, comic book paper. And those are, I believe, are like 17 by 14. I don't remember exactly. It's been a bit while I was drawing on comic book paper. But it's a lot bigger. And then when you scan them in and set them up for printing, the size changes, obviously. But for the sake of maintaining detail, you scale it up. So I'm trying to draw the detail that he was able to do in much smaller space. I do look at it as a challenge. I do also look at it as a way to improve my precision even more so, have more control over the pencil, even more so than before. But also it's really to say, hey, if you want to sit down and draw comics, you don't need a lot of space for it. You just need to focus and pay attention to all the details and do your best. You know, you could just get yourself a small pad, and if your space is limited, you could just set up shop and do it. That's the beauty of it. There's a lot of stuff I would love to do that's also an artistic field. Like the other day I was looking on Instagram, and there was this guy who was setting up an entire scene from with an action figure. Like he had the backgrounds, he had the bricks, he had the garbage cans, he had like the stairs, the windows, and painting all of it and putting in all the cracks and crevices into the walls and all that stuff, and it looks awesome. It looks like a lot of fun to do that. And in fact, I really would want to do that at some point. Maybe, this is Art Lounge. It's not just comics. One of the reasons why I named it that. I will do a live stream of coloring action figures. Like, I always thought that it was kind of cool to, like in Dungeons and Dragons, how they come with like the little sets, and you could just hand paint the figurines on there and play with those in Dungeons and Dragons. I always thought that's fun, especially because I like painting. I love painting. And it just kind of combines like this miniature statuette. And I do like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. I like games like that. Might have mentioned previously the game called Pillars of Eternity, which is based basically on that sort of gameplay and story, and the battles that you have are all based on the roll of the die and what the outcome of that is, and you do some math to figure out the damage. It's just done for you. You don't sit there doing it. So it could be turn-based gameplay, or it could be live action. You get to determine that, which is another great thing about that game, Pillars of Eternity. And the storyline is so good. Like, I loved everything about it. The music is great. Like the original soundtrack is awesome. I just play it for whenever I'm like riding my bike or something, or even at home just sitting around doing stuff. I have that playing in the background. It's just such a great soundtrack. Some of them, like the only gripe I have with the soundtrack is that I wish there was more music variation to when you enter battle, because it's always like the same one and you're just like, oh, come on. That would have been cool. But it's not too bad. Like, it didn't turn me off from playing the game. I still read everything in that game, the lore, the characters, the terminology in it, everything pretty much, or as much as possible. And I still want to revisit it and like play a different character and like read even more stuff. Like, they have like tiny little details. You got bookshelves where it has like all these books with the lore, and I've collected all of them and read all of them as well. And just like and then once you read all this stuff, the story is so much richer, and you begin to notice these like little details in the character dialogues and other things that you see that really aren't part of the main storyline, but it just makes the development of it all so much better. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about it, is that like once you do figure out all these things, once you figure out all the different gods that they worship, and different terms that they used, and how all of the stories developed, or why there are certain ways in certain towns, and you're just like, whoa, okay, this is just a masterpiece, And they made another one, Pillars of Eternity 2. I also played that as well, and that's something I have to revisit. Actually, is just don't have the time for that. Now, that game also has so much lore in it that I didn't get through. But that's what I want to revisit it for. I want to be able to read all that stuff, get to know all the characters, I might have to get a better computer for it. You know, I think it deserves that. And hopefully they make like a third one. I hope they make a third one. I hope they don't sell out and try to make it some stupid blockbuster like they did with Diablo. I hated all those games after even, like, I wasn't too happy with 2. 2 was just like a way of revisiting 1. You guys are familiar with that game. Like, I thought 1 was just fantastic. The sound, the characters, the story, how it's developed, the mood, everything was great about it. You know, like when you were entering the layers, the acting, the voice acting, that's something that people overlook. Is voice acting, which I was disappointed in. There's another game called Wolfson that kind of reminded me of it, and it's great gameplay. It's fun. In fact, I think it's much better than any of the new versions of Diablo or whatever. The gameplay is excellent, the graphics are excellent, but the story, the voice acting, just it didn't do it for me. It really lacked luster there. I was really disappointed with it in terms of like, it's such a great game, such fun gameplay. The environments are very cool. You know, how they set them up, they're also very well made. But the voice acting just sucked, man. I wasn't happy with that at all. But it makes a huge difference. You know, it's the little details. That's what I was getting at. It's like little details like that can turn a game from fun and memorable and nostalgic to just like another action blasting boring game. Like that game, Wolfson, I just wanted to get through it. I didn't even really take in the character development or anything like that, but with Pillars of Eternity, everything. Like, I listened to all the audios. Like, I didn't skip through the dialogue conversations. I like listened to them talk because the conversations were so great. The voice acting was so great. There was humor in it, like really good humor as well that I enjoyed. Yeah, just like everything about it. Those guys were, the creators were fantastic. And I really, really hope that like they maintain the integrity if they do another series. I mean, even if it flops, it doesn't matter. I would still play the for Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. Just revisit those. Because even as much as I've done, there was still so much there that you explore. It's like reading a really good book. You know, you read it the first time, and it's memorable and it's really good. And then you read it the second time, and you're like, oh, whoa, I didn't notice that before. And that's probably because you just know the development of the story so well now. And it just made the second time around, it's like, great. You're like, oh, wow, that was fun. And then the third time, you notice something that you didn't, like, quite grasp, or you saw a different perspective of it based on, like, what you've experienced, or you grew up and started to see things differently. And now you're noticing these different things in the book. You know, so it's kind of the same way with this game. It's like, every time you revisit it, you start to notice like a new thing. And the way they even designed it is, if you get a new character, if you play a different character, the dialogue switches. So the dialogue between the characters start to change, and you start to see like their alignment. You know, just like in Dungeons and Dragons. And that's another really cool thing I really enjoyed, is like their description of the alignments and stuff. Their alignment changes, and how they interact with you as the main character changes, because like let's just say like their race, right? Like that whole conversation is disappointed with your race, and somehow you're like the representative of all of them, which you don't. That's the whole point of it. You don't represent any of that stuff. But yeah, some of the characters are very much all about that, and they turn on you because of that, or they don't. After a battle, they have some comments or like some remarks that they have towards you that like isn't favorable. But it all makes it interesting and like very lively. I could go on about that game for hours. Because I'm a nerd when it comes to those things. I really do enjoy a good Dungeons and Dragons story, and that's kind of why I'm also into Stranger Things. And they did a great job there. And I think what people don't realize when they criticize this stuff, it's like, it wasn't made, like if the argument is like, oh, it's for kids or whatever, it's like, it wasn't made by kids, it's made by adults, and they're putting in all this effort and all this stuff. So when you're liking it, not liking, that it is about these young kids, you're liking the content that they're creating, the graphics that they made, the dialogue that they created, the cinematography that they put into it, And I guess it's more coming from like a creator's perspective, but I think any viewer, if you were really to pay attention to all those things, you would be like, wow, it's a lot of work, and it's well done. The camera angles, creating the scenes and creating the shots, and how to make the scenes compelling, and how to make the characters relatable. It's not something that a kid could do, really. I mean, granted that the actors are kids and they're able to convey these emotions, but the script, everything is done for them. It's created by a whole team of people that are adults. So yeah, I don't really find that to be shameful. It is weird, like I saw an interview with one of the characters talking about how somebody got like a tattoo of like 11 on their arm. And that's really, for me, in my opinion, that's going too far. I don't want to have, and she said it even herself, it's weird to have an adult have an 11-year-old tattooed on them, especially if it's not their kid or whatever. You see that a lot, but I would not want to do that either. That's really taking it to the next level. It's just uncomfortable. Like, I wouldn't want to show that to anybody. I'd be like, oh, look, I got this 11-year-old or like a 14-year-old or whatever tattooed on my arm. That's sorry guys, if one of you's done it, think of another way to cover it up or something. I don't support it. Whatever. I mean, it's really not a big deal. They really get into it. But that would not be a tattoo of my choice at all. I'm gonna eyeball it. Nah, I'm not. Ugh, look at that. I can't even start the next panel. Time is up, ladies and gents. Time is up. I'm gonna have to cut this stream. I gotta go take care of some stuff and get ready for the next stream that starts at 8. I'm gonna be doing a project stream, which I'm also excited to get back to. You guys are gonna see some stuff that I'm working on personally. Yeah, don't want to go over time on this again, but stick around at 8 o'clock. tonight. I will be live streaming again. You could always catch it later. It's going to be saved, so you could check it out if you can't tune in. But if you like this content, subscribe, hit the like button, check out the social media, talk about stuff that we talk about on the stream. You know, if you did play, for instance, Pillars of Eternity, talk about that. That's a guaranteed good conversation. We can talk about that for hours. You guys can relate to each other and your experiences in it. Like, what was it like? Which characters did you choose? Which alignment did they go with, and how the characters interacted with each other based on that. Talk about other stuff of what's going on, and we talked about different drawing techniques, what kind of techniques you've used, or what you're struggling with that you want to improve on. Just to get the community going, get you guys connected with each other, connected with the subject, get you excited about drawing and comics and games and all that kind of stuff. So check those out. They're in the on the website. The links are there. Pick one that you're into. I'm also going to be posting other stuff too as well that can make it even better for you guys to connect and interact. And just even if you have some questions that you want to ask me, post them there. You could even post them. I think you could post it in the Twitch chat, and I'll see it later. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know how that works. It's kind of why I got the social media links there. But yeah, post your questions, post some comments. I'll write you back, or I'll talk about it on the next stream. And stay tuned. I'll see you guys soon.